I'm going to speak first. We've had to rearrange some of the order at the last minute for various reasons. And I was going to then call Neil Vernon, but oh yes, there he is. I couldn't see him at first. So Neil, I'd like you to speak after me if that's all right. So I'll start with an introduction as far as the Workers' Memorial Day, with what it's about this year, and I think Neil will say more about it in general. Remember the dead and fight for the living has never been a more appropriate phrase in the midst of this current crisis. Indeed, Workers' Memorial Day has been chosen as a day of action by the health unions in this country. But this is a global crisis, and it's actually been called as Global Days of Workers' Action, starting today and up till the 1st of May, as workers raise critical issues. But nearly everything I'm going to talk about is going to be about in this particular coronavirus crisis. Don't forget those people like my father, who died of industrial disease long before this virus showed itself. It was going to be a theme this year of work-related stress and mental health. Now that's been an issue for a long time. After years of increased austerity and cuts have caused severe mental, physical and financial stress to people. I'm just going to mention one person as an example of what came out of that health-wise. My friend Vicky, who was a drugs and alcohol counsellor, when the service was drastically cut back, and she, in the end, her health got so bad, she had to leave. She's suffered ever since with chronic fatigue syndrome. She's probably not even up to joining in today. And that's been a long time she's been out of it. Now, in this crisis, the stress levels have gone through the roof for workers, whether they're frontline, essential workers, or those who are told to work despite not really being essential, such as building luxury accommodation, and for those who've lost their jobs or worry about their futures. In this world where profit is put before people, the evidence is very clear that warnings about this pandemic or a pandemic have been very clear for a long time to come and have been ignored by the government. It was certainly highlighted by our hazards campaign. And given that that followed years of cuts, austerity, racist immigration policies, privatisation and casualisation, PFI, policies of the market, the result is a situation where we have a lack of infrastructure, there's no adequate staffing levels in the health service or any other public service, no readiness for what was then an inevitable pandemic sooner or later. So what I'm going to say is that the tragedy is that the terrible extent of this crisis was very largely preventable. I'm going to say, right, I accuse the last few governments, that's Conservative and New Labour policies, for their failure to put people first and put us in the situation we're in today. And I'm sure other people want to say that as well. Now steps are being taken that are too little, too late for far too many people, and we're not out of it yet. Unions have never been needed as much. They've played a huge role in the current improvements that we've managed to negotiate. Hundreds of thousands have joined as a result. But the big challenge in front of us is that there will be pressure to return, and there'll be a vital role for unions and reps in the months to come. Union reps need to get the employers to produce adequate risk assessments and put in place proper safety precautions before anybody goes back to work. Are in the line. We're going to remember them today, but we need to remember that all of those who are out working are at risk and need adequate protection. It's increasingly obvious that people in care homes are in the front line just as much, both clients and staff, residents. All the public-facing workers are at risk, from essential services and retail to refuse collection. Transport workers, teachers and others some of them are starting to die, but they're not getting the same publicity. They're not getting priority to PPE testing. I mean, it might not be available enough in the health service, but it's even harder to get outside of it. And we need to remember them today. And they're currently not in line for the payments we heard yesterday announced from government that are going to be for the health service. Also to remember, I was going to say vulnerable groups of workers in insecure contracts, but I read something that pointed out, of course, they're not just vulnerable, they're oppressed. They haven't got the rights they should have. Equalities are starker than ever. Black and minority ethnic workers are the most effective for a whole number of socio-economic reasons, and women are still in the front line for low-paid work and in the line of fire. Let's not forget undocumented workers, like asylum seekers, who want to work. They would like to be able to help in this crisis. They're not even allowed to volunteer. We've got doctors who can't, we're not allowed to help, even though they've got years of experience. And instead, we're asking retired people who are often sometimes in risk groups to serve in the health service. They're all at terrible risk, without adequate protection, because of the market forces, and as they have been for many years. So, like a lot of people now, I'm going to say never again will we put up with low pay for essential work and policies that put our needs far below those of profit. Things must change in future, and they have to start now. Thank you. So, I'm going to call for a minute. Next, we're going to have Neil Vernon of West Midlands Hazards Trust. And I hope that the next person after that will be ready. So that's the Reverend Peter Selleck. We've moved you up the agenda from Birmingham Cathedral. So if those two people are in a state of readiness, Neil, are you unmuted? No, I can see your lips moving, but I can't hear you. So, Naeem, can you unmute him? Can you unmute yourself? Can you see the microphone with a red line through it? Neil?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay. So Neil Vernon, West Midlands Hazards Trust.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. The coronavirus pandemic has affected workers throughout every continent. Tens of thousands of workers throughout the world have died. No more is that being brought home to us all today at 11 o'clock earlier, when a minute silence was held up and down the country. This was held for all the key workers who have lost their lives, including, sadly, up to 100 people in the NHS. While we can't all be together at events today that we hold annually in Birmingham, Wolverhampton, it is more important than ever that we continue this event in whatever form we can. And thank you to the Trades Council for arranging this today on Zoom. Those events and those that take place around the world on International Workers' Memorial Day have come about because of the tenacity of a Brummy lad. And that person was Tommy Hart, a trade union activist. Tommy brought the event to the UK in 1992, and we have seen it grow to the major event that it is today. Tommy believed passionately that health and safety is a right, not a privilege. And it was him that came up with the slogan that you'll hear many times today and seen up and down on all the events that have been promoted today. Remember, and Kathy said it earlier, remember the dead, fight for the living. That message has never been so important. Proper safety is being compromised by this government and businesses. So let's pay tribute today to the brave nurses and doctors the hospital porters, the cleaners, our public transport workers, our posties, our care workers. Kath mentioned earlier, construction workers, an area that I work in. And I have spoken to many construction workers who don't want to go to work, who feel they're putting their families at risk, but they have no choice. Many of them are self-employed. If some of them work for agencies, if they don't go to work, they will not be paid. And they're putting their families at risk every day when they enter a construction site. Also, there's many people that are putting themselves in danger at the moment, and they include delivery drivers who are keeping the country running, and many of those people are in working conditions without the correct PPE. When we emerge from this crisis, we must demand better, not only to honour those groups of workers who have gave their lives for us, but we know that the pressures will come, especially in the recession, that we're looking at a recession, that big businesses will look to cut corners, and those corners will be cut with the health and safety of our members put at risk. So it's vital that we, the trade unions, are there at the forefront, making sure that our people are safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil. I next want to call the Reverend Peter Selleck. We've moved him up the agenda, and he is going to talk about the people who've died specifically. And after that, I'll be calling Dave Rogers. So each time, I just want people to confirm on the chat that they're there and ready to speak next. So the Reverend Peter Selleck, Birmingham Cathedral. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Yes, I'm Peter Selleck. I'm from Birmingham Cathedral, and also belong to a college of chaplains who are in places like hospitals and care homes at the moment, and working very much to support a lot of workers at the moment who are having to make difficult decisions and scared. My current role is as a chaplain in the City Council in Birmingham, and I'm working with social workers and staff there who are trying to facilitate some of the issues around PPE and to help people access services and to resolve some of the issues that are going on in people's domestic settings as well. So very much aware of some of the situations. It's been a pleasure to regularly be part of the ceremonies that we've held in Birmingham Cathedral by the monument regularly over the last few years, and kind of just want to name, and in a moment we're going to just sort of name some of the people that we know who've died, but also to recognise some of the emotions that we come with today, whether that's anxiety or anger or sadness at the situation that's going on, and if we can find a way of using silence perhaps just to honour and to take seriously the feelings that we have that can then enable us to move forward into action afterwards. We may be here anxious because of the precariousness of life and the situations that many people are facing today. We may be gathering sad because we know that people are putting themselves in danger and have put themselves in danger to care for their neighbour and their friends and have lost their lives or are risking their lives. Or, as we have heard a little bit, we can also be angry at the hazards that people have faced, and the hazards are probably greater than they really needed to have been at this time. Jesus, and I'm going to just briefly kind of make a reflection to our faith and to my faith and the faith of some of us perhaps. Jesus often spoke of turning the values of society upside down, and we've heard already criticism of the way in which government and society has held its values in the last few years, and how we regularly, together with the unions and friends, call for different values in the workplace and in the economy and in society. And Jesus was someone who stood for changing those values. So I'm going to read a little bit from the Beatitudes that many of us will be quite familiar with. Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And also a little reading from the Holy Quran, which says something similar. It says, "O Allah, give us steadfastness in obedience and keep us far from sin. Give us sincerity in intention and acknowledge that which is sacred in all of us. Bestow on us guidance and constancy. Seal our tongues with reason and wisdom, and fill our hearts with knowledge and learning." So I'm going to say some prayers for those who have died in the course of their work, remembering particularly the 9 or 10 names of people that we know in the NHS in our region who have died, or in other workplaces, particularly related to coronavirus, but also, of course, to remember people that we may be thinking about who have died through accidents, through stress, through whatever situations at work may have brought about their death. And I'm going to take some time, and then at the end I'll leave a little moment of quiet for us to remember our own thoughts and prayers. So as we gather, we remember that in times past, not all the sick and the suffering found their way to God's side. Some had to have their hands taken or their bodies carried, or even just their names mentioned. So confident of God's goodness, today we bring others to God in our remembrance. In a moment, we will name before God those whose death has been a tragic shortening to their rich lives. Those who may be remembered more for sadness and distress rather than what could have been their full potential. Those who have died in the work of for others. And so we remember by name particularly those who have died recently because of the virus. For Elsie Sazuzi, for Best Nkoma, for Leilana Derit, for Arima Nazreen, for Amy O'Rourke, for Vishna Razia, Patrick McManus, Mohammed Naiman, and Mahadaya Jagrup. I'm sure there are other healthcare workers and nurses perhaps whose names haven't been released, or we may not know them at the moment. And I'm sure there may be names that you also wish to recall. Lord, look on our love and let your kingdom come. And also in prayer, we remember before you all who are grieving at the moment, for whom light has been turned to darkness, perhaps because the end of a life or breaking of relationship has left them stunned and turned their souls silent in conversation, not knowing where to turn or who to turn to. And so we remember those who grieve. Lord, look on their love and let your kingdom come. And we remember before God those who struggle every day because of illness or disability caused by workplace conditions or relationships. We give thanks for the graciousness of friends, family, and all who are caring. We pray that in times of anger, we may know the path to justice. In times of depression, we may know the presence of love. In times of pain, we may know patience and healing. Lord, look on our need and let your kingdom come. And Lord, we also account before you our human responsibilities for the welfare of our brothers and sisters. We hold before you those who exercise authority over health and safety, who make hard decisions about human life and values. We ask for your guidance, blessing, and strength on all that have to make just decisions and all who have to manage healthy relationships. Lord, be with us in our judgments and let your kingdom come. I'm now going to just have a short moment of silence. If you would like to remember any of those who we've named or people that you are carrying in your thoughts and hearts. And after a silence, I'll finish with the Lord's Prayer and a verse from the Buddhist writings, the Dhammapada. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Hurt not with the body, but use your body well. Hurt not with words, but use your words well. Hurt not with the mind, but use your mind well. Let us live in joy, although having nothing. In joy, let us live like spirits of light. Amen.
Thank you, Peter. I have Dave Rogers down from Banner Theatre next, followed by Andy Chaffer. Now I know Andy said he didn't know if he could make it, and we had a short film sequence for a few minutes, and so I'll refer back to Naeem on that if he knows whether Andy is here, or has he got the film to show. So that's after Dave. So Dave Rogers of Banner Theatre.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I'm from Banner Theatre. We would have been performing a show called Free for All at the moment, which focuses on the fact that the NHS has been starved of resources for the past 20 years. And therefore, it's hardly surprising the current situation that we've been in with the NHS. Thanks, Kathy and Naeem, for inviting me to sing. I'm going to do a song in a minute. I'd just like to say, one of the bits, we're going to update our show when we go out on tour again. All our gigs have disappeared at the moment, of course. And one of the essential element will be the way what the crisis reflects about what's been done to the NHS by successive governments. Professor Dorling of Oxford University predicted in 2016, that's 4 years ago, that as a result of the cutbacks, the NHS would be woefully unable to provide enough clinical staff, ventilators, ICU beds, or mass testing to contain any future pandemic. In the same year, a full-scale pandemic exercise involving all government departments was held in London. The conclusion was the NHS needed resources, badly needed resources, including ventilators, PPEs. So what's happened? Those resources have been denied, and that report was buried. This song, written by my partner Antonia here and myself, is called The Forgotten, and it's about all the people who've been forgotten as a result of this crisis, who are always forgotten. It's a bit new, so I'm reading the words. On the streets of Glasgow, Willie sleeps on the floor. The city is deserted, there's no offerings for the poor. Course I'm scared, I'm very scared, Willie says to his mate. No home or roof above our heads, how do we isolate? No government relief, despite the media din. The homeless are forgotten, thrown in the garbage bin. Locked away in Holloway, Sharifa finds no peace. One more pregnant woman pleading for release. The Ministry of Justice confirms she's at high risk, but she's just another convict. Who cares if she gets sick? No government relief, despite the media din. Prisoners forgotten, lost in the viral spin. My life will not be safe, so said young Lucy Watts. The rules of this pandemic mean she'll be left to rot. The frail, the sick, the challenged are low on the viral queue. No right to decent health care or a ventilator crew. No government relief, despite the media din. Disabled folk, forgotten lives, tossed in the wind. Cafe reservations were not just going right. The next thing Eric knew, it was all gone overnight. Jobs are disappearing in Italy, France and Spain. One more part-time worker, bottom of the chain. No government relief, despite the media din. The workers are forgotten when there's no union to step in. Flags they fly in Liverpool for Elizabeth Glenister. She risked her life for others, so said the minister. Without frontline protection, 3 more nurses fall. Victim of a system that never was meant for all. No government relief, despite the media din. Even heroes are forgotten, still no tests are in. Barbara lived a long life, so the story goes. Just another care home death, no one needs to know. Asked to sign the order, do not resuscitate. 4,000 faceless figures buried by the state. No government relief, despite the media din. The elderly forgotten, the mask is wearing thin. Whose lives are remembered, whose lives are forgot, whose work is essential, whose work will be lost. Unless you're rich and powerful, they'll never see your face. You don't count for nothing outside the marketplace. No government relief, despite the media din. When the people are forgotten, the fight back must begin. No government relief, despite the media din. When the people are forgotten, the fight back must begin.
Thank you very, very much. It's a very apt song. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andy Chaffer was going to be the next speaker. He did say he may not make it. I haven't seen an indication that he's here. Naeem, do you have the film? So this is a film of Andy Chaffer, who is Secretary of Unison Birmingham NHS Mental Health Branch. We don't seem to have any, is it moving? Naeem, we've got no movement. Here we are. No, don't seem to be moving.
Is it moving now?
Oh, nothing.
Okay, give it a couple of seconds. Because it's probably a very busy time at the moment.
Yes, I've discovered that Messenger wasn't working. I think it was flooded with workers.
Yeah. Well, this is YouTube, you see.
YouTube probably the same.
Yeah.
Shall we play it at the end? If try again when all the speakers have spoken.
Yeah. At the moment, it's not letting me do anything.
All right then. So let's just move on to the next.
Did it start at all, or?
I just see two faces sometimes, and I don't even see them sometimes.
Okay. Yeah. So it is actually sharing the thing, but it's.
Yeah.
So I think we will stop it, and I will try and do it from my computer if I can.
Okay.
Okay. This is to be expected, really.
Health workers,
Okay.
in particular, have always faced particular stresses and face life and death situations all the time. They also face people being distressed and relatives being distressed.
Right. Well, we have a slight technical hitch. Everything seems to be flooded, I think, with Workers' Memorial Day things today, but the YouTube video doesn't seem to be working where we had a recording of what Andy Chaffer has to say. Naeem's going to try and access it differently. Are you, or shall I call the next person? Can't hear anything, Naeem, if you're talking. You need to unmute yourself, Naeem. Naeem, can you unmute yourself? No, I think he's trying to get the
I think we have to forego this one. We continue and we'll see whether we can do it at the end or a little bit further into the program.
Okay, well, it's in that case we move straight on.
Solihull Mental Health Unison branch.
Oh, I think you've got it now.
Memorial Day had the theme of mental
Okay.
health for workers,
Let me share it then again.
and now with COVID-19, that's become even more.
You can hear it, can you?
His voice, but no.
Yeah.
Vision.
I'm going to get the share the screen as well now.
Health workers in particular have always faced particular stresses and face life and death situations all the time. They also face people being distressed and relatives being distressed. But COVID-19 has brought new problems. The fact that people workers are having to wear protective equipment that makes the patient feel more isolated. The fact that staff feel isolated from the patient by wearing this equipment. The fact that they're scared of what might be happening, what they might become infected, infecting everybody. And it's a dangerous time for people because they're not feeling they
Can you see it now?
maybe in their normal way of relaxing with friends or going out socially with their friends.
Can you see it?
Being able to just have a
You can see Andy's face.
and all of those things.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll have to put up with this and keep going, I think.
Cope with the normal stresses and strains.
Can you hear him?
Yeah.
Okay.
The issues of the number of deaths of people, the issues of being infected with COVID-19 are obviously major stresses, but are being increased more than normal. And we have to be ready at the end of COVID-19 as to how people are given the psychological assistance to make what happened not normal, but reasonable, that they're able to accept what's gone on. And that will require a lot of investment into mental health work with people after the COVID-19 situation has alleviated. Access to personal protection equipment has been difficult and remains. Depends where you work. If you're a health worker in acute services, you always had access to it, but rarely had to use it to the degree you're now using it. If you worked in community services or in mental health or in other health services, you rarely used it because you didn't need it. Unless it's a new way of working, it creates worry for people, but also creates worry for the patients because they feel they don't know what's happening on occasion, particularly if they're confused, they've got dementia, or they're very unwell mentally. We need people to have the right equipment. We also need, for the future, things to explain to patients what's going on, because people have to be explained in different ways for different needs. COVID-19 is a pandemic that's affecting the world. Our health service in Britain has stood up extremely well to the stresses and strains of it. But that's through no benefit of previous governments, because the cuts in the health service funding over the last 10, 15, 20 years have helped bring about the crisis that we've got today. We wouldn't have needed more beds if new hospitals hadn't been built with less beds than the previous hospitals that they replaced. We wouldn't have needed to scramble around for personal protective equipment if we'd had a centralised NHS planning body rather than the different trusts having to work almost alone until the planning got better. We wouldn't have needed to wait for some of this equipment if we'd not had delivery at the last minute, rather than actually having planned stocks held in store. The way the NHS has been run as a semi-business has not helped planning PPE and needs to be rectified after we've got through the COVID-19 crisis. Because the NHS is not a business. COVID-19 has proved that. The NHS is a caring health organisation that needs proper funding and needs to be funded for day-to-day need, but also with proper planning, so that in the future, if we have a situation similar to this, we're on the right foot from day one, rather than always running to catch.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
We won't listen to Donald Trump at the moment.
No, thank you. So while Naeem's getting us out of the end of that video, I'll just mention that the next speaker I've got down is Mike Shakespeare, and I do see him, so I know he is here. That would be followed by Rob Johnson. So Rob, you should be ready. I can see you both on my screen, so you're both here. So we have Mike Shakespeare of Birmingham Trades Council Executive Committee. Thank you. Mike?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you all hear me? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
right. Today's requirements are for international cooperation by the health and scientific community to eliminate this horrific virus. As I always suspected, the real essential workers, with all of those currently working in the health and care industry, are cleaners, bin workers, shop workers, school teachers and childminders who enable other workers to go to work. The list goes on. I am also thinking of friends and trade unionists and comrades working in the construction industry, where I spent most of my working life. My memories on this Workers' Memorial Day are for those who have sadly died. I was an apprentice electrician and all of 16 years of age, and whilst working on flats close to Newtown Road, a worker in the block where I was fell while carrying out his duties in the lift shaft and died. While still an apprentice and working at the IMI Works Whitton, a fellow apprentice electrician and colleague was electrocuted. He was 19. Another time I was carrying out my role as an approved electrician, having moved on a few years at the main hospital in Coventry. I remember the construction company was a large international firm whose head office was in Sweden. A worker there died on site, once again in a lift shaft, but I only found out about this particular facility while reading about it in the local newspaper the next day. And yet I couldn't have been more than 50 metres away from the incident, but was not aware of it. Fortunately or unfortunately, I was only on that site for a short time. This well-known international company had been in touch with a contact of theirs that ran an office above a butcher's shop in Droitwich Vale, Worcestershire. This particular office's remit was to monitor trade unionists and safety representatives throughout the United Kingdom's construction industry. The international company, on receiving information relayed to them by the office manager from Droitwich office, was that I should leave site forthwith. The conclusion being my trade union activities rendered me undesirable. It was not the first time this had happened, and it would not be the last. So we now know that it wasn't just the American Senator McCarthy who revelled in blacklisting people, but also international conglomerates who in cohorts with leading household British companies and figures, including one-time chairman of the Conservative Party, who conspired to blacklist thousands of British building workers, of which I was just one of many denied employment in an industry who, as I was, had been well trained and qualified to work in. All of us found guilty in secret and without the right to defend ourselves. I would just like for people to reflect that in this pandemic, construction workers building vital coronavirus hospitals known as Nightingales for the NHS have been working day and night. So I think they deserve our applause. But so maybe the developers, in their attempts at forcing Brickies, Sparks and Chippies to continue working on proposed luxury flats. Construction workers' lives matter. Please help us shut down non-critical construction sites. No worker should be forced into choosing between either feeding one's family or infecting them with a deadly virus. You may have heard or seen on various media outlets that work has now begun on HS2. However, it's unlikely that you will have heard or seen on various media outlets that the Western Tunnel has already claimed its first fatality. As to commemorate Workers' Memorial Day, our thoughts go out to those who lost loved ones, both recently and in the past. I will recall the loss of two brothers to asbestosis, probably down to a short spell working for an American company who had taken up residence in the city. A father and brother-in-law who both contracted leukemia. My father died, my brother-in-law lives. Maybe it's a coincidence, but they both worked at a well-known tyre factory not too far away from where this event would normally be held. On my father's death, I was asked to give permission for a post-mortem. I agreed. I was then asked where he had worked, and having given my reply, the doctor just shook his head and said, not another one. I wanted my contribution to Workers' Memorial Day to be about experiences, my experience, as opposed to statistics and charts. But we can't totally ignore the information reported to us. The deaths in UK hospitals to date because of coronavirus runs into thousands. And I'm not going to give you a figure because I don't think anybody knows what that figure is at the moment. Another statistic comes from the British Medical Association report that austerity measures taken by the Conservative government since 2010 and pre-coronavirus has resulted in approximately 120,000 avoidable deaths. Not exactly a success story by the party in power. However, it should not be forgotten that they did succeed in doubling the amount of UK billionaires from measly 150 to 300. Obviously, that doesn't include those British multi-billionaires who may or may not live on their own private island, but continue to reside outside the UK, so as to avoid paying UK income tax, thus denying support to those public services that go to enhance the profits and their lifestyle. During my years working on building sites, I was acutely aware that I never received or was given a right that workers somewhere had not had to make sacrifices and struggle for. With that in mind, I would like to applaud the Unite workers at Marriott UK hotels who have obtained the right to receive 100% pay while in furlough. Let's hope that opens up the door to be followed by the many, hopefully at the cost of the few. Mike Shakespeare, stay safe. Cheers.
Thank you, Mike. That's lovely. Okay, now next along the speakers list, we have Rob Johnson, if he's ready, from the Midlands TUC. And following that was supposed to be Violet Juma. I don't see any list of her being here. She would be by phone, and I don't know whether she can indicate by chat, but if that's at all possible, Violet, if you're here, please write something on chat so that we know that you're actually here. And if she's not, then I'll say something. I know what she wanted to say briefly. Okay, Rob, are you ready? Unmute yourself. Rob Johnson, Midlands TUC.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the invite and for the effort you're going to organising this via Zoom. Very strange circumstances to do a meeting again this year, but as people have said, vitally important. I'll try not to go over ground that people have touched on too much, but I think in many ways I just want to frame my remarks and kind of linking it a little bit into some of sort of the May Day action just in a few days' time that we're going to be calling for. As you know, fundamentally what this crisis has done, it's shone a spotlight onto the economic and the social system in which we live, and has shone the light on and brought people into contact with the reality that this system is not working and has not worked for too many people. Our communities are frightened. The West Midlands is second only to London in a region that's been affected by coronavirus. I think up to 2,100 deaths within our region from coronavirus. Economically, we're going to struggle going forward. I know we're going to lose about 10% of our economy. So what we need to do is to use this moment to rebuild a better Brum, a better West Midlands. And within this, and this is why I want to be positive, that there are glimmers of potential change. We have been, for the TUC, working closely with the combined authority to ensure that the voice of, ordinary Brummies are heard at the decision-making table. That is a welcome step forward. And it's a welcome step forward that people now recognise the work being done by key workers. They are no longer hidden. We will know about, the supermarket workers, our transport workers, our posters, our care workers, our health workers. They are front and centre. They are the key workers. For too long, we've been valuing GVA and productivity over care workers. Poverty wages for care workers whilst record bonuses in the boardroom. Something is wrong, and people now expect a future fit for heroes, for working people going forward. And that future has to be a safe future. And so that is why I think there's an important link here about safety, and that has to be at its core. Now, we're going to be using a hashtag thank a worker on May Day. We're asking people to put out messages thanking a worker, just to remind people that what people are doing to keep us safe, and in so doing, putting themselves at risk, and unfortunately at unnecessary risk. And that is why we have called for an independent judge-led inquiry into the PPE scandal to be announced by the end of this year, so that lessons can be rightfully learned and we could put in place measures for the future so that no worker again has to choose between feeding their family or putting their family at risk and themselves at risk. So we want to learn that. But what are the sort of things that we can actually do to truly thank our workers? Pay rise. We have too many workers we've seen key workers earning less than £10 an hour. Too many nurses, council workers, school staff, trapped in poverty. Workers now 11 years on for financial crisis, still earning less than they were then. It's about time we all had a pay rise. That's the heart of decency. It's found that key workers got a bonus. Let's recognise it. If we cannot give key workers a bonus for what they're doing for all of us right now, then where are we at? To ban 0-hour contracts, which become a real scourge of employment, that are these pernicious contracts are trapping people in a cycle of poverty that you can't escape. You don't know what to plan for each week. You don't know how to plan your childcare. We need to eradicate these. That has to be a heart of a dignified, safe future. And bogus self-employment. I know a speaker earlier referenced delivery drivers. Again, we are thankful for everything they're doing, keeping the country moving. But the model for delivery drivers is bogus self-employment. You wear a uniform, you drive a car, you deliver, you're told to go where by a boss. But as a self-employed person, bogusly, you have no sick pay, you have no holiday pay, you have no rights, and being forced to work in dangerous situations and on construction sites, the scourge of bogus self-employment. These are realities that are leading to people being put in danger and at risk, and unfortunately dying as a consequence. So for my takeaway from this is absolutely our focus is what we can do now to keep people safe. We've got a report now that's calling for, as we have a gradual reopening of the economy, that is done in an appropriately safe way, that trade union health and safety reps and the HSE are actively involved in ensuring a safe, managed return back to work. So that's absolutely front and centre. But alongside that one, let's use this opportunity to refashion our economy, refashion our society that puts fairness, dignity, partnership and solidarity at its core. It's not a lot to ask. For the last 10 years, you'll know that we've had a homelessness crisis. It exploded the rule of austerity on our streets, and we were told this is a difficult crisis, it's complex. Overnight, we managed to solve it. If you can solve that overnight, then we can solve the problems of poor pay, of inadequate funding for a health and safety executive, and the scandal of the shortage of PPE. It's a question of political will, and it's a question of us as a community and as trade unions coming together to shape that and ensure that we use that anger and build a better Brum, a better country going forward. That's down to us. It's something we can do. There absolutely can be no going back to the way things were when we're back to normality. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much, Rob. Right, I'll tell you who's all left on the agenda here. Violet Juma was going to talk about her friend who's died. I haven't seen any indication yet that she is managed to get in. Followed by Kerry Armitt, and then a poem by Rob, who is here. I think if Violet isn't able to say anything, Naeem's not been able to find her at all?
No, I haven't.
I'll just say then that Violet is a friend of Elsie, who was the first of the names read out by the Reverend Peter Selleck. She was a nurse in a West Midlands hospital, and she was hoping to be able to get to make a tribute to her friend today. It's a shame if she hasn't been able to do that, because I didn't know her friend, but I'm sure we all appreciate the pain and suffering that her family have gone through. Okay, I think I'll try to get a hold of her afterwards and see if we can get a few words to at least put on the Trades Council website. That's followed then by Kerry Armitt, who's the last of the scheduled speakers, and hope we'll get a few people in. Kerry, are you ready?
I am, yeah.
You're obviously unmuted. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Hello, everyone. It's good to see so many people coming in, taking part today, despite us not being able to meet in person. For those of you who don't know, my dad was Tommy Hart, who brought Workers' Memorial Day to the UK, as previously mentioned by Neil. So thank you for that, Neil. I just wanted to talk a little bit about how proud he would be today to see everybody still marking the occasion and still spreading the word, and how much more popular Workers' Memorial Day has become over the years, and even especially now. Colleagues around the country in different industries mentioned to us about how they hold a minute's silence in their workplaces, and that's because of the Hazards campaign, TUC and myself all spreading the word as much as possible about Workers' Memorial Day. So my dad himself worked in factories, and that's why he decided that it's really important to promote safety at work for people. He had an injury himself when he worked at a factory called Tubes, when his hand got trapped in a machine, and he also worked at Triplex, and he became a union rep. to try and help people to promote safe working. He then went on, he became very ill and he had a heart operation, and following his recovery he went to work along with Kathy and others at the Health and Safety Advice Centre, which was the ideal place for him, because for the last 10 years of his life then he campaigned to make the future better for others, which is what he dedicated his life to. So I'm just going to, if I can, share my screen now, because I have a video from my mum, who also unfortunately passed away in 2017. But she carried on the work of promoting Workers' Memorial Day. I used to attend every year. So now it's been left to me and my brother, Chris, who's also on the call now, to sort of carry on representing the family. So I'm just going to, if I can, share this with you. Let me know if you can see it.
Yeah, anyway. No, we still don't have it yet.
No,
It'll take a little while to load.
To.
It's another YouTube, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think YouTube is not working very well today. Perhaps we could leave that.
It worked a minute ago, so just give it a second.
Give it a few seconds, yeah. Yeah, it's beginning, isn't it?
Well, my late husband, Tommy Hart, brought it to Britain in 1992.
You can hear her.
Yeah.
He was motivated to do something about health and safety as a result of an accident he had at work, where his right hand was trapped in a machine, an unguarded machine. That was in 1968. A couple of years later, in the early 70s, he exposed the fact that there was a presence of asbestos in the workplace where he was. He was actually showering down above the machines, you know, from the roof. But drawing attention to that placed him at risk, actually, and the employer abused him as a result of that. And he quickly realised that he was a lone voice and that, you know, he needed to work with others if he was going to actually make the workplace a safer place for working people. And so he set about looking for a way to bring together activists, trade unionists, victims and their families to do something that would actually, you know, be a vehicle for change, really. But it was really important to him that it did include activists and families. And he came across, in the early 90s, a thing that was already happening in Canada and the USA. It was called Workers' Memorial Day. And they actually used a strapline, Remember the Dead. Being an activist by nature, that wasn't good enough for him. He added another strapline, which was Fight for the Living. And that then became the slogan for Workers' Memorial Day in Britain. And the first Workers' Memorial Day in Britain happened in 1992 on April 28th. Tom was a talented photographer and cartoonist, so he was very fortunate, really, because he could use novel ways to actually promote Workers' Memorial Day and workers' rights. And he also worked very creatively with artists, with theatre companies, journalists, and he was very, very good at using novel ways to involve people in the campaign for change. What is amazing about Workers' Memorial Day, and would delight Tommy more than anything else in the world, is that it's continued to grow so much since his death in 1994. His colleagues and victims and relatives have continued to make sure that Workers' Memorial Day is observed, not just in the West Midlands, but right across the UK, actually. And it is actually a global event. So how can you get involved? Use social media, attend a local event, organise action in your own workplace. If you want to find out more, contact the TUC. When we wave somebody off to work in the morning, we expect to say hello again at the end of the day. Don't let people die in vain.
Right, thank you very much.
I can't get back to the video now.
Personally, I was a friend of both Tommy Hart and Carol Hart and worked with them both in 2 different jobs. So of course I found that very moving, hearing Carol's voice again. While Kerry is putting down the video, if she can, the next person I want to call, Rob Funton, wrote a poem specially for Workers' Memorial Day this year. I have heard it's been posted up on YouTube and I've been circulating it. So he's brought it along with him today. And are you ready, Rob, with your poem? Have you unmuted yourself?
Rob, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I've unmuted myself.
Okay,
Sorry,
good.
sorry for the delay. Yes, my name's Robert Fontanana. I work and live in the community because of care workers and support workers, and I've been in lockdown for 5 weeks now, and I've written many poems, and this I'd like to share with you the one I've written about Memorial Day, and it's called Memorial Day. While remembering those lost, praying and paying homage to those past, remember Memorial Day is about the living and the dead. Let us not stand in silence, heads bowed, while brave people are forced to put their lives on the line, supporting and caring for those in great need. So we plead, come together, fight together, support the living, keep them alive. We are people, not worthless commodities. Hang on. There were commodities that cannot replace. We cannot be replaced like machinery. We are made of flesh and blood. We have spirit and soul. Living in unity is our sole goal. All we ask for is some protection. The lack of PPE makes us cry. Must we make a song and dance just to ensure we do not die? By the seat of our pants we fly. Clapping for carers is great. Providing us with proper protection is better. Then we can all look forward to a better, brighter, safer futures where healthier lives are our fate in an equal, just state. Let us make a noise, ensure Memorial Day is a day no one ever forgets. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob, for that moving poem. Right, before I try to bring anybody else in, that's all the people who were either down to be speakers in advance or the plus the poem. I'd just like to thank all those speakers very much now, just in case anybody does start slipping away before the very end. Now, what I've been indicated with is that one is that the Trades Council, who has hosted this event, and thank you particularly Naeem for actually doing all the hard work behind it. The next event for the Trades Council, which I'm also involved with, is the May Day event on the 2nd of May. And what's being asked is that if you want to get more information about that, just put your email address into the chat. Some people have done that already, and you can be sent the details on. There was also somebody making a point that, of course, we have to not only support the health workers and join in the clapping sessions and so on, but more to the point, use those as an opportunity at 8 o'clock every Thursday to raise some of the issues we've been raising today. Now that's easier said than done, but there are opportunities and people can film themselves with slogans, with placards, with chats like test, 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 PPE, keep our workers virus free. And if you do film any of that, then you can also send it on to the Trades Council and to other websites and let people know about it. I think that's all. I mean, I know Stuart indicated that he would like to speak as well, but I hope I've covered his point there, because we're 20 minutes past the time we were going to finish.
I wanted to say something on the economic effects of the crisis, which I think is important.
Right, well, certainly that is something that we're very much going to cover on the May Day, but if you're able to keep it to a couple of minutes only, we can let you say something about that.
Right. The other thing I think should be said was that there was a text out today saying the two major hospitals in London, I'll get the details in a minute, we're going to have a 30-minute sort of mini strike rally, leaving emergency cover, to protest about the lack of PPE. And I think, you know, one can endlessly make points about this, but, you know, only in the context of some at least symbolic protest action are the government going to listen, I think. My point on economic effects is that the government's official Office for Budget and Responsibility predicts a 13% fall in GDP this year and a government deficit of 273 billion. Now, to get your head around the size of that, in the peak of the last economic crisis, 2009-2010, the government deficit was only 154 billion, which actually provoked a decade of austerity, massive cuts in welfare, education, etc., etc. The IMF have already called for cuts and tax rises to deal with this massive increase in government borrowing. And I think we need to be a little bit skeptical of what we can have from the new Labour leadership. In 2009, they committed themselves to reducing the deficit by a half, and went along with a lot of the austerity policies, including support for cuts for disabled people, which was reversed with the coming to power of Corbyn. So I think I think there is going to be an assault on.
Could you draw your comments very close,
to be aware of? Okay, thank you.
Very much. I mean, that is very important. We are having a Zoom meeting for the Trades Council on Saturday, the 2nd of May, and we can resume that.
Can we just make one more announcement?
Well, one more person asked if he could speak, but if he's very short, we can.
Yes, I can be short, Kath.
Yes, please.
I was speaking of the National Union of Journalists. We have had, in the last few weeks, a very large increase in mental distress amongst members. Most of our members are freelancers, and therefore they're not on paid employment, so they can't be furloughed. On top of that, the local newspapers, which I'll just bring 1 second and get back to where I am, the Newsquest, Trinity Mirror, and JP Media have all imposed pay cuts immediately in the last fortnight of between 10% and 15%, and further in some of the meetings. The real hardship thing about this thing, if the employer starts cutting wages, we call collective strike action. But how can you call collective strike action in a time like this when you're not in your workplace, you're at home? Thanks.
Thank you, John. And Naeem has an announcement. I've got something from Kerry saying that stuck on screen before she could finish speaking. I don't know if she had something urgent she had to say, but I want to wind this up now. Is that all right, Kerry? And thank you as well.
Yes, thank you, Kathy. No, nothing urgent. I just didn't want people to think that I just bluntly just disappeared.
Okay, I think that's everybody managed to get their penny worth in asked. So Naeem, you had an announcement.
Yeah, I think somebody's already put it on the chat line, but if people who haven't got the chat line open, there is a May Day event on Friday, the 1st of May, 7:30, and there will be we will have some information on our website so people can have a look at it later today.
Okay, thank you. So don't forget, Birmingham Trade Union Council website will have information about all those things, and hopefully we'll be able to put some of what people have been talking about today, so it can be followed up later. So thank you again, everyone, for coming. Some of us are also going to look in a TUC, I think they call it a video chat or something, starting at 2 o'clock. So no rest for the wicked, I'm afraid. Thank you all once again, and we're all finished. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
And Naeem will turn us off.
Bye, everyone.